Hello, now we're looking at part two of the second time around. And we're going to carry on just where we left off. And I'll remind you that we're just going to carry on with what are some of the factors that lead to the success or failures of these step families. We'll also look at the relationship between the step families and society. And we'll just pick up where we left off. And we were leaving off with a little bit about what are some of the issues around step families. And we'll just carry on with that, okay? So let's get on with this. We're awful close to the end, so keep up the effort, and it's really important not to let yourself slide off. So let's keep going here. The residential parent-child relationship. Parent-child relationship often suffers in the post-divorce period. It's a struggle, it's a difficult time for both the parent and the child. Some children face parents restructuring after a breakup as becoming a parentified child. When parents remarry, children must give up some responsibility and closeness to the new adult in the family. And the adjustment to a loss of spouse often affects the remaining spouse's energy and emotional resources. And there's a greater tendency for doing what's called like closing ranks. That is becoming more increasingly dependent on one another. And so the resident parent-child relationship needs time to adjust to how this is going to happen, how we will still continue to relate with the parent that's no longer in the house, how will we relate to one another now that that person is not here, and trying to do so in as healthy a way for the child and the parent and the other adult as we can. When we think about the non-residential parent-child relationship, while the relationship between the child and the non-residential parent varies a great deal from family to family. Non-residential mothers are much less likely to stop visiting children, and they're more likely to keep up regular visits. If either parent remarries, the visits with non-residential parent tends to drop off. Children's contact with non-residential parents involves social and fun activities. The residential parent is involved in the day-to-day activities such as helping with homework and maintaining discipline. So the contact between the child and the non-resident parent is still valuable and can be more valuable if it's arranged, they talk about it, and they organize how these relationships are going to work out after the divorce. Now the step-parent, step-child relationship, this can be one of the more difficult relationships to iron out, and it will vary from family to family based on the residential parent or the parent, the new parent and the existing parent of the children, and the children individually. The relationship between step-parent and step-child is important for two reasons. First, many marriages flounder because problems in this relationship. If there's not a good respect for the time required to nurture a relationship between a new adult and a child, then that relationship between the new adult and the child can make the new marriage very difficult. Secondly, adolescents in step families are at high risk of developing behavioral problems when they don't feel like they're very much a part of the process and they're not being listened to. Successful step parents accomplish two tasks. They develop an appropriately affectionate relationship with the child, and they establish themselves as a legitimate parental authority. Now, parental authority I should put into some sort of, quote marks, if you will, just sort of say, it's not like you're being a parent, you're being a parental authority, and that you have some ability to implement discipline in a responsible, negotiated way between the parent and the step-parent, and is understood by the child as being supported by their parent. And that's where it's difficult, is that a lot of this open and honest communication doesn't happen, which is why many of these relationships don't work, because of these relationships between non-parent, parent, and the child. Step-parent, step-child relationships depend somewhat on the child's age and sex. Step-parents tend to be more successful with younger children who become attached more readily, and more report positive relationships with boys than girls. The degree of acceptance of step-family members is often affected by loyalty issues. Discipline is another potential area of conflict. The differences in child rearing styles and discipline styles can have a huge impact on what's accepted and what's not. When we look at the relationships between stepbrothers and stepsisters, well, there's a whole gamut of possibilities here. Many stepfamilies do not live together since their most common pattern is for children to live with their mothers. Children expect their birth parents to consider them special and side with them in conflicts. If one of the children visits or moves into the family home permanently, problems may arise over turf, meaning boundaries again. You know, who has access to what, who and where are the loyalties, and how do we establish the pecking order, and this can be a real challenge. When adolescents of both sexes are in the family, conflict may be adopted as a way of maintaining safe distance between them. But also, and importantly, step-siblings can provide one another with a lot of emotional support. They too are going through and may be able to identify with one another's experience. Now, not all step-families or remarriages involve children from previous relationships. Sometimes the child is born to a step-family member or step-family itself. About half step-families have a child born to them, the most common with younger mothers. Having a baby is related to step-family stability. Mutual child may symbolize family peace and harmony because the birth demonstrates love and commitment of the couple. Stepchildren fare much like children raised by single mothers. They have more educational, emotional, and behavioral difficulties than children growing up in the original nuclear family. They need to separate statistics from individuals. Many children in step families are at greater risk of maladjustment and lower self-esteem, but do as well as those living with both biological parents. The difficulty exists sometimes when children are born into the step family whose family already have children, and the difficulty then becomes again about loyalties and boundaries, and will one have more favoritism than the other. So it just emphasizes the importance of open and honest communication. Now, remarriage and the family cycle then, this introduces a new phase, but the experience of remarriage differs according to the life cycle of each partner. Greater strain involves responsibility to their children, especially difficult when they have adolescents. The greater the difference in life cycle stage, the harder it is to adopt a new family because husband and wife are dealing with different life cycle issues. Now, what is meant by that is, you know, if a person is going through, they're younger, they've gone through getting married, having a young child, and then getting divorced, and they start to have a relationship with someone whose children are already older and maybe even moved out, well, they're at two different stages of life. Their life cycles are at two different stages. Their priorities tend to be a little different. That can be more difficult. And then lastly, looking at the family adaptation, what you're seeing here is James Bray step families types. And you're seeing three different versions here. Useful way of looking at how remarriage families adapt is by considering the stressors they face, the resources they use, and the meaning they place on their experiences. Stressors include boundary and role ambiguity, unresolved emotional issues from earlier relationships, and adjusting to different family cultures. Successful step families have realistic expectations and an ability to cooperate with one another. Flexibility, respect, communication, sense of humor are characteristic of successful remarried families. How family members view marriage affects their adaptation. Many regard new unions as a second chance or as an intrusion to the parent-child relationship. Others consider it a flexible family form that can be shaped to meet members' needs. Now, the point about James Bray's step family types is that it indicates what it's kind of characterized by. You know, for example, the romantic type. The couple romanticizes the new family and expects that feelings of love and closeness and harmony will arise immediately. Probably as a result of unrealistic expectation, this type is least likely to succeed. Now, there's been varying forms or types, and James Bray's is just one example. The point is that if we look at remarriage as a particular salvation or as a a fixed boundaries that, I'm going to come in and fix this family and salvage it, well, then we're coming into a remarriage with the wrong expectation. And this is why it emphasizes open and honest communication, that good dialogue, expressing fears, doubts, and hopes and dreams, and being honest with one another is going to increase the likelihood that the type that you enter in as will be open and genuine, and that when problems do arise, you approach them, you negotiate them, you solve them, and carry on. And you involve everybody. Because this is a new family form, it doesn't operate the same as an older family form. And this is part of the reason why when we make these moves in sociology and notice these new family forms, they're not really well fleshed out, if you will. People going through it are evolving with that family form, and then it becomes something that you could sort of say, okay, these are the conditions of successful remarriages, and these have been the conditions of which remarriages that occur aren't so successful, and we can learn lessons from them. Okay, there we go, the second time around. I hope this has been helpful for you. We are almost done this semester, and so keep on going, and I hope you're having fun with this, and hopefully you can see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. Thank you, and goodbye.